Good morning, students. Welcome to today's class. In our last class, we discussed about the digestive system. So today, we are going to learn about one more system, that is the respiratory system. What do you mean by respiration? So respiration is a process in which oxygen is taken in and carbon dioxide is released from the body. So we all know that we respire, and that is a process where we are taking in oxygen and giving out the carbon dioxide. So during this process, there is a breakdown of the food that results in the release of energy. So during the digestion process, so we know that digestion is a process where the complex food materials will be broken down into simpler substances, and in the small intestine the complete digestion takes place, and it is sending the absorbs the nutrients and sends it to all the parts of the body through the blood. So during this respiration process, the food is broken down, and that is resulting in the release of energy. The parts of respiratory system are nasal cavity, pharynx, larynx, that is also called as voice box. Then you have the windpipe, the lungs, and the diaphragm. So coming to the first part, that is the nasal cavity. So in this picture, children, you can see very clearly this is the nasopharynx, the nasal cavity. So then we have the pharynx and the larynx. Okay, so this is the mouth and trachea, which is also called as windpipe. Then you can see here the lungs, and here which are having the air sacs and bronchiole tree, and this is the diaphragm. So what is the function of the first part in the respiratory system, that is nasal cavity? So we know that when we breathe, the air enters through the nose. So through the nose, the air enters the nasal cavity, and the air gets warmed up and also gets filtered in the nasal cavity. So what the nasal cavity will do is, the air when we breathe, it gets warmed up inside the nasal cavity. So not only that, even it filters the dust or anything whatever is present and sends it out. So it also gets filtered in the nasal cavity. The hair which is present, so the hair is also present in the nose, and that hair which is present in the nose does not allow, or it will not send any dust and germs from entering the respiratory system. So it is preventing the dust and germs to enter inside the respiratory system. So that is the function of the first part in the respiratory system, that is nasal cavity. So come to the second part, that is the pharynx. So this is the nasal cavity, children, and next to nasal cavity we have the pharynx. So this part is called as a pharynx, and it next to the pharynx we have the larynx. So larynx is also called as a voice box. So below that larynx you can see the what you call it as like a vertebrae, a bunch of bones which is present here. So this is nothing but the windpipe, what is also called as a trachea, and that will be branching. So we will be knowing about all those. So the first part in the respiratory system is nasal cavity, and then comes the pharynx. So the nasal cavity leads to an organ called the pharynx, and from it the air passes into a chamber called as larynx. So from the pharynx it goes into a chamber which is called as a larynx, and it is also called as a voice box. So the opening of pharynx into the larynx is guarded by a valve which is called as epiglottis. So here a valve will be present which is guarded by the pharynx. The pharynx entering into the larynx is guarded by a valve which is called as epiglottis, and this valve closes and when we take the food. Okay, so the opening will be closed, the epiglottis will be closed when we are taking the food, and the remaining time when we are talking, it gets opened. So that wall which is opening the pharynx to larynx is nothing but called as a epiglottis. Okay children, so coming to the next part, so after pharynx and larynx we have the windpipe. So the windpipe is situated in front of the foot pipe. So this is a foot pipe and this is the windpipe. Okay, so it is present in front of the foot pipe in the neck region. So this region is nothing but the neck, and it is about 12 centimeter in length and 2.5 centimeter in diameter. So the length of the windpipe or the trachea is 12 centimeter and its diameter is 2.5 centimeter, and it gets divided into two parts called bronchi. Okay, so this windpipe or trachea is divided into two parts, and these two parts are called as bronchi. So these two are called as bronchi, and this is the windpipe which is divided. Okay, so as it enters the lungs into the chest, so this is the chest cavity and this lungs is present inside the chest cavity. So it is divided into the, as it enters the lungs in the chest cavity. The windpipe is divided into two parts which is called as bronchi. Okay children, so this is about the pharynx, that is, and larynx is also called as voice box, and then to the wind. Now coming to the very important part in the respiratory system, that is the lungs. So here you can see the picture of a lung children, the windpipe which is branched into two bronchi, and this is nothing but the lungs. Okay, so here this is windpipe, the windpipe is also called as trachea, and here you have the pharynx and larynx will be here. So this is called as windpipe which is branched into two parts, and here you can see the small like star-like structures. These are all called as alveoli, and this is the lung, two lungs, and then you have the pink color one which you can see here, that is nothing but a diaphragm. So what is the use of the lung? The bronchi which leads into the lungs which are situated on the either side. So this bronchi will be leading into a lung which is situated on the either sides, on both the sides, and either side of the chest cavity. So this all come under the chest cavity, and it consists of air sacs and blood vessels. So this chest cavity consists of air sacs and blood vessels, and when the air enters the lungs, the blood vessels which are surrounded, when the air is entering into the lungs through the windpipe, it reaches into the lungs. When the air is entering into the lungs, then the blood vessels around the air sacs. So around the air sacs, we can see the blood vessels which are present. These like this. Yes, you can see very clearly here. So the blood vessels which are present around the air sacs, they take in oxygen and they give out carbon dioxide. So what they do is they take the oxygen and they are giving out the carbon dioxide. Okay, and water. They take oxygen and give out carbon dioxide and water, and this oxygen which is taken in is carried by the blood to different parts of the body. So it is carried by the blood. The blood carries the oxygen and send it to different parts of the body, and in return, along with the this one, it also collects. So not only sending the oxygen to all the parts of the body, but it also collects the carbon dioxide and water vapor from the blood. So it collects the carbon dioxide and water vapor from the blood, and it also enters the lungs, and the lungs will throw out the carbon dioxide which is present through the nose. So through the breathing process, it takes in oxygen and send to the all the parts of our body through the blood vessels. In the same way, it carries the carbon dioxide along with the water vapor and throws out. It brings to the lungs and it throws out through the, that is, respiratory system again through the nose. Okay, so this takes place because of the lungs. So lungs play a very important role in the respiration process. Okay children, now coming to the next part, that is the diaphragm. So where is the diaphragm? See, in this picture children, you can see very clearly this is the pharynx, the larynx, which is also called as voice box, which is again continued as a windpipe, and it is branching out into the bronchi. This part is called as bronchi, and here you have the lungs, which is present inside the chest cavity, consisting of the alveoli. And below that you can see this is nothing but a diaphragm. Okay children, so diaphragm is an muscular organ which is present below the lungs. So lungs cannot move by themselves. The lungs cannot move by themselves, and it is the movement of diaphragm. So the diaphragm will move. Okay, it is only the movement of diaphragm and the muscles between the ribs of the chest wall. So here you have the chest wall and you have the ribs, and it is between the ribs of the chest wall and the movement of diaphragm which cause the expansion and contraction of the lungs. So here in this picture you can see children, inhalation, that is taking in. So when the air is taken inside, it reaches to the lungs. You can see that the diaphragm contracts, the chest expands, airflow in. When the diaphragm is contracting, the chest will expand. So this is nothing but the inhalation. So when it chest expands, it can take in oxygen. So in the exhalation, when you see, the diaphragm relaxes, okay, and the chest contracts. When the diaphragm is getting relaxed, the chest will contract and the air will be flowing out. That is the carbon dioxide rich in air. This is oxygen rich in air. When the diaphragm contracts, then the chest expands and air flows in. The diaphragm relaxes, the chest contracts, and the air will be flowing out. So this diaphragm and the ribs, the muscles between the ribs of the chest wall causes the expansion and contraction, expansion and contraction of the lungs. So thus the breathing takes place. So this is regarding the another important part in the respiratory system, that is the diaphragm. So lungs cannot move by themselves. It is only because of diaphragm we are able to move the lungs up and down. That is when you are inhaling and exhaling children. Okay. So this is about the, what do you call it, as the respiratory system. So please read the textbook for your better